The 16 things that are making your home look cluttered after the age of 60 and how to fix them. Suggestions for senior citizens. Does it seem as though your home is becoming more cluttered for no apparent reason these days? As time passes, it is only natural for our homes to get cluttered with recollections, mementos, and the accumulation of a lifetime's worth of possessions. However, there are times when the very things that used to bring us happiness might start to make our living spaces feel more cluttered, chaotic, and older than they should be. In this video, we will identify 16 common objects that may be contributing to the appearance of clutter in your home after the age of 60. Even if you are no longer aware of their presence, every single thing that we are going to talk about has the potential to alter the amount of freshness, tranquility, and warmth that your home exudes. This includes everything from ancient furniture to hidden mounds that you may have learned to ignore. We encourage you to stay with us to the very end, since recognizing even a few of these signs and taking some straightforward actions to address them could not only make your environment more accessible, but it could also elevate your spirit. Now, let's get something going. To begin, outdated and cumbersome furnishings. When you reach the age of 60, one of the first things that might cause your home to feel congested is if you continue to keep enormous, heavy furniture that does not fit your lifestyle or the space you have available. It may be the enormous wood coffee table that you used to adore, or it could be the overstuffed armchair that has been residing in the same area for 20 years. During the time when people decorated their homes to make them feel more solid and full, these pieces made perfect sense. However, in today's world, they have the ability to make a room appear smaller, darker, and far more crowded than it actually is with their presence. Despite the fact that you use certain pieces of furniture only infrequently, you may find that they continue to dominate the area, both visually and physically. They provide obstructions that disrupt the natural flow of a room, making it more difficult to walk around and making the entire environment feel less attractive. It has been demonstrated in the field of psychology that surroundings that are densely packed with large objects that are not required can quietly increase levels of stress without our being aware of it. It is more difficult to relax when we are surrounded by furniture that takes up an excessive amount of space, both visually and physically. This sends a message to our brain that we are confined. Consider the case of Margaret, a woman from Ohio who is 72 years old and has retained her huge dining set for a considerable amount of time after her children have gone out. Her kitchen was so little that the table, which was intended for 10 people, was so large that it made her everyday life feel claustrophobic and more difficult to maneuver. After she removed it and replaced it with a table that was more compact and suited to the space, the entire room breathed easier. And she did as well. You can quickly free up your living areas by removing or downsizing just a few pieces that are cumbersome. This will make your living areas feel lighter, more contemporary, and simpler to move through. It has nothing to do with forgetting things. To make the space work for the life you are living right now, rather than the one you lived 30 years ago, is the central goal. Sometimes, merely exchanging one heavy piece for something lighter, such as exchanging that enormous bookcase for 2 narrow shelves, can affect not only the appearance of the room but also how you feel while you are inside it. Not only are our homes museums of our past, but they are also reflections of our existence at the present moment. Relinquishing furniture that is no longer suitable for use is not the same as losing history. Comfort, simplicity, and a revitalized sense of independence are the things that are being chosen. The second item is heaps of newspapers and publications that have not been read. The accumulation of periodicals and newspapers that have not been read is yet another covert offender that frequently makes its way into our houses over the course of time. Initially, it begins in a harmless manner, with a few topics that you had intended to get around to, and a newspaper you have the intention of clipping items from. But before you know it, these stacks increase and are now sitting on coffee tables, countertops, and side tables. This creates visual clutter that is not only distracting but also causes mental strain. Despite the fact that these papers may appear to be innocent, They are actually sending a powerful message to your subconscious every time you see them. They are reminders that you are behind in completing duties, things that you have left undone, and other things. As time passes, these seemingly insignificant stress signals add up, turning your house into a place that feels less like a place to relax and more like a list of things that never seems to stop. On a psychological level, there is a strong connection between mental clutter and physical clutter. When we are surrounded by mounds, even ones that are familiar to us, they take up small portions of our mental energy, detracting from our ability to concentrate and robbing us of moments of quiet that we aren't even aware we are missing. In particular, after the age of 60, when tranquility and simplicity become even more desirable, it is essential to acknowledge that maintaining the cleanliness of one's physical surfaces can have a significant impact on one's mental well-being. Consider the case of Frank, a retiree from Pennsylvania who was 68 years old and had a little stack of magazines next to his recliner. Over the course of a few years, the stack of magazines continued to grow until it reached 3 towering stacks. When he finally made the decision to get rid of them, he ended up keeping only a few current ones that he actually wanted to read. He was surprised to find that his living room looked considerably lighter and more refreshed as a result. Having a clean table was not the only thing that mattered. It was also about restoring mental space that he had lost without even realizing it. To tell you the truth, if a magazine or newspaper has been sitting there for more than a month without being read, there is a good possibility that it is adding more responsibility than it is adding value. A straightforward guideline to adhere to is to recycle or donate everything that is more than 4 weeks old, and to make a commitment to retaining only those things that actually provide value to your day. It is not about being merciless when you clear away these piles, rather, it is about making room for new energy, new experiences, and the peace that comes from being in an environment that supports you rather than one that nags at you. I would appreciate it if you could use the second comment section below to let me know that you are continuing viewing this video and that you are finding these insights to be helpful. I strongly suggest that you subscribe to the channel and activate the bell if you have not already done so. This will ensure that you do not miss any videos. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. Now, let's proceed with our plans. The third issue is obsolete electronic equipment. Electronics that have been there for a long time but no longer serve their purpose seem to be lingering around. It's possible that you have a DVD player that has been unplugged for years, a VCR that is collecting dust under the television, or a tangle of forgotten wires and chargers that are hidden away in drawers and baskets. Upon initial inspection, they could appear to be insignificant and unimportant leftovers. If you take a closer look, however, you will notice that they are silently contributing to the sensation of clutter, giving the impression that your home is burdened down by objects that no longer serve a meaningful purpose. Electronic devices tend to age more quickly than virtually every other household item. In spite of the fact that everything that was once considered cutting-edge swiftly becomes obsolete, it is simple to keep hold of it just in case. The problem is that noise that is not audible to the human ear is produced in a room by stray wires, obsolete accessories, and unnecessary gadgets. They make areas feel less tidy, less deliberate, and less calm. They also fill up shelves and crowd corners if they are not properly organized. When it comes to psychology, the act of hoarding outdated technological devices is frequently associated with a fear of waste or an attachment to memories. It's possible that the old stereo brings back memories of parties you've hosted in the past, or that the camcorder brings back memories of family holidays. However, it is essential to keep in mind that the memories reside within you, and not within a box that is filled with cables. When you let go of gadgets that are either not functioning properly or are not being used, you make room for the life you are living right now, not the life you lived 20 years ago. Take, for example, the case of Linda, a 74-year-old woman from Michigan who had 3 outdated laptops stacked in the closet of her guest room, even though none of them had been turned on in more than a decade. She continued telling herself that she might be able to remove the photographs from them at some point in the future. Upon ultimately using a firm to transfer the files in a secure manner and recycle the computers, she came to the realization that she had been carrying a significant amount of physical and mental weight for no apparent purpose. The act of releasing obsolete electronic devices does not involve erasing history. There is a choice to be made between freedom and clarity. A living area that is only occupied by things that are actually useful to you in the present moment sends a strong statement. You are still developing, you are still making progress, and you are still constructing a life that is dynamic and vibrant. If you find yourself hesitating, tell yourself that getting rid of these belongings that you have forgotten about does not mean that your history is no longer a part of you. It merely pays tribute to the person you have become and the house that you have earned the right to appreciate each and every day. Number 4. Knickknacks that are just too crowded. Small ornamental things have a tendency to accumulate in number over the course of time. It could be a figurine here, a souvenir there, or a present from a buddy that you just couldn't bring yourself to part with. Within a short period of time, every surface will be covered with a multitude of small items that are vying for attention. Although each item may be associated with a special memory or a personal narrative, when placed together, they have the potential to generate a feeling of overwhelming busyness that makes a room appear smaller, more cluttered, and more difficult to relax in. The presence of visual clutter is a potent influence. Order and simplicity are the things that our eyes are naturally drawn to when they are scanning a room. This visual peace is disrupted when there are an excessive number of competing items, particularly small ones, which makes it more difficult for the mind to settle. Instead of having one or two significant accents that communicate your story, having an excessive amount of items can cause the genuine riches to be lost in the noise from the other stuff. Having an excessive number of little things in the environment might, from a psychological standpoint, contribute to feelings of uneasiness or restlessness. This is especially true around the age of 60, when the majority of people tend to desire more tranquility and simplicity in their surroundings. It has nothing to do with wiping your past. What is important is to provide the things that truly matter with the breathing room they require so that their beauty and significance can be brought out and appreciated. Consider the case of Harold, a man from Oregon who was 70 years old and had a passion for collecting tiny lighthouses while he was traveling. In the course of several decades, they occupied each and every shelf in his living room. While he was carefully selecting his best 6 to exhibit, he tucked the rest of them away in storage. It wasn't until he did this that he discovered how much more spacious and welcome his home might feel. His collection did not vanish into thin air. Simply put, there was room for it to be enjoyed once more. When you want to add variation to your collection, it is a good idea to select a few of the pieces that are the most meaningful or attractive to you, to highlight them, and to rotate them on occasion. You are able to continue to cherish your memories without allowing them to take up too much space in the place that you currently reside in. Being less is not the same as losing oneself. The goal is to make your home a place where your spirit may freely breathe, where guests can feel at home, and where you can fall in love with your house all over again. There are an excessive number of family photographs showing all at once. Photographs of our family are among the most valuable possessions that we have. They convey our narrative, bring to mind the people we care about, and establish a connection to experiences that are far too significant to be forgotten. The presentation of an excessive number of images at the same time might unintentionally contribute to a feeling of clutter. Even when the photographs themselves are of significant value, it is possible that the entire impact will be overpowering rather than heartwarming if every surface, from coffee tables to hallway walls, is covered in frames. The eye is unable to determine where to settle, and the brain processes all of the images as a single massive wave of visual noise rather than pausing to appreciate each individual image. It is possible for something that was intended to feel cozy and personal to end up feeling hectic and busy. The presence of psychologically overloaded displays, even when they contain items that are significant, might result in a mild sense of mental exhaustion. After the age of 60, when simplicity and clarity are more valued than they have ever been, it is important to reevaluate the amount of information that is displayed at any given time. The love and the memories are not diminished in any way by the act of curating your collection. The effect is that it improves them by providing each photograph with the space and respect that it merits. As an illustration, Carol, a Georgia resident who is 76 years old, used to have dozens of photographs crammed onto the shelves in her living room. Each and every photograph of a grandchild's school, each and every family reunion photograph, and each and every holiday get-together was included. The atmosphere in her home became more serene, brighter, and somehow even more filled with love when she chose a couple of her favorites to frame in a beautiful way and hung them strategically on one wall. Keeping things looking fresh and special without overpowering your area can be accomplished by rotating the images that are shown during the seasons or by building a small gallery wall collection. It is not about diminishing the significance of your family, rather, it is about making it possible for their presence in your home to be experienced more clearly and happily. Without the distraction of having too many people in the space, you and your guests will be able to actually pause, smile, and experience the memories coming to life one lovely moment at a time when each photograph has room to breathe. I would appreciate it if you could use the 5th comment section below to let me know that you are continuing viewing this video and that you are finding these insights to be helpful. I strongly suggest that you subscribe to the channel and activate the bell if you have not already done so. This will ensure that you do not miss any videos. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. Now, let's proceed with our plans. The 6th item on the list is heavy draperies and aged curtains. To a much greater extent than most people realize, window treatments have a significant impact on the atmosphere of a room. The presence of heavy drapes and old curtains, particularly those that have been darker, faded, or torn over the course of time, can give the impression that a home is burdened down and closed off without your even being aware of it. There is a possibility that they were once exquisite or stylish. Nevertheless, as fashions and requirements evolve, they have the potential to become sources of visual weight that drain the light and energy from a surrounding area. Heavy materials not only prevent natural light from entering a room, but they also provide the impression of visual bulk, which can reduce the sense of openness that is present in the space. It is possible to breathe new life into a room almost immediately by letting go of these previous treatments. This is especially true beyond the age of 60, when many of us begin to want brighter and fresher environments. Natural light has been shown to have a significant impact on cognitive processes such as mood, alertness, and even overall health. The presence of gentle natural light in a home gives the impression that it is more uplifting, more spacious, and more welcoming. Consider the case of Robert, a North Carolina resident who is 75 years old and has had heavy velvet draperies in his living room for nearly 3 decades. Once upon a time, they gave the space an air of grandeur. Nevertheless, as time passed, they began to take in light, dust, and a sense of heaviness. He was astounded by how much larger and more happy the entire space felt when he made the move to panels that were light and airy and allowed sunlight to flow in. You may change not just the appearance of a room but also the energy that you feel whenever you go into it by selecting materials that are lighter in weight, colors that are neutral, and designs that are straightforward. Even a relatively minor modification, such as removing superfluous valances or exchanging dark hues for lighter ones, can completely transform the atmosphere of a room without requiring any other adjustments to be made. This has nothing to do with following the latest trends or spending a fortune. It is about being able to recognize when something that was once beneficial to you has gradually transformed into something that restricts you. You should have the impression that your home is a place of revitalization and illumination, a reflection of the dynamic life that you are still living. It is not a museum that is clinging to the remnants of the past. Number 7. Fitness equipment that is not being used. There is no age at which exercise is not necessary, but After the age of 60, maintaining an active lifestyle can significantly improve both one's physical and mental well-being. However, exercise equipment that is not being utilized or is being abandoned can easily transform from being a tool for greater health to becoming an obstacle to a residence that is tranquil and free of clutter. Whether it's a treadmill that doubles as a coat rack, a stationary bike that gets lost under mounds of laundry, or hand weights that gather dust in the corner, these devices subtly generate a sense of chaos in the space by their subtle presence. At first, we reassure ourselves that we will return to it in a short while. The idea that keeping it close by will in some way stimulate more frequent movement. But with time, equipment that isn't utilized on a daily basis starts to communicate something quite else. A subtle reminder of goals that haven't been achieved and activities that haven't been completed. The psychological impact of these silent reminders might be detrimental to one's sense of self-worth. The act of introducing sentiments of guilt or remorse into situations that ought to be filled with motivation and encouragement. It is possible that one of the most liberating changes you can make is to get rid of the stuff that you do not actually use. There is no need to give up on your workout routine. The goal is to design a home environment that encourages the kind of physical activity and way of life that you actually like in the present moment. Perhaps it's time to get rid of that cumbersome elliptical machine and replace it with a set of lightweight resistance bands. You actually make advantage of or just create extra open space in the living room so that you can perform morning stretches. Consider Susan, a woman from Arizona who is 70 years old and who used to have a home gym that had a full-size setup. Having spent years going past machinery that she no longer utilized, she eventually came to the realization that these gadgets were not only taking up physical space but also emotional space. She felt as though she had reclaimed a portion of her life that she had not even been aware she had lost when she sold the equipment and transformed the space into a nice reading nook. In terms of fitness, the objective is not to give up. The goal is to bring your environment into alignment with the life that you are currently living. Stretching, strolling, dancing, or even just sitting quietly by a window in the sunshine are all examples of activities that fall under the category of simple, pleasant movement that can be encouraged by a clear and open space. Your house ought to be a source of inspiration rather than a burden where you are constantly reminded of the things you ought to be doing. It is possible to gain access to new energy, healthier habits, and the kind of exercise that is suitable for the dynamic and ever-changing life that you lead by releasing equipment that is not being used. It is the 8 products that have expired in the pantry, although the kitchen is frequently referred to as the heart of the home. It is simple for that heart to become clogged with products that we no longer require. Some of the things that can quietly accumulate behind closed doors are expired pantry products. Boxes of crackers that have gone stale, cans with faded labels, and spice jars that are older than 10 years, although you might not be aware of them on a daily basis. Their presence is a factor that adds to a subtle sense of disarray and heaviness. Not only does a cluttered pantry make it more difficult to locate the items you require, but it also conveys the idea that things are spinning out of control in a subtle way. Whenever you open a cabinet that is stuffed with meals that have been forgotten or that have expired, it adds a minor but serious mental load to your life. It has been discovered by psychologists that congested food storage facilities can also make people feel more burdened and even less inspired to create or eat nutritious meals, even if they are not consciously aware of the reasons behind these feelings. One of the simplest and most rewarding ways to revitalize the energy in your home is to get rid of any products that have beyond their expiration date. Not only is it important to maintain cleanliness and have a well-organized space, but it is also essential to make room for both physical and emotional nutrition. Take, for instance, Charles, a man from Indiana who was 73 years old and had not had the opportunity to access the upper shelves of his pantry in many years. When he eventually got around to tackling them, he discovered cans that were older than 10 years and jars of spices that he was unable to even figure out what they were. He reported that his entire kitchen felt like a new room after he had cleaned the shelves, wiped them down, and neatly organized what was fresh and helpful. He claimed that the setting was one that encouraged healthy cooking and joyous meals, rather than one that evoked feelings of dread or uncertainty. Checking your cupboard once every few months is a simple routine that may make a significant difference in your life. It is time to get rid of something if it has been more than a year since it was last used or if it has expired. This not only frees up space, but it also encourages a mindset of clarity, preparation, and care for yourself as well as everyone else who shares your table. It is not the area where you should feel burdened down by neglected clutter. Rather, your kitchen should be a location where you feel energized to nourish yourself. Getting rid of outdated cupboard items is a simple task, but it sends a powerful message that you are here, that you are thriving, and that you deserve a place that is conducive to the life that you are living right now. It would be helpful if you could leave a comment number 8 below to let me know that you are still watching this video and that you are finding these insights to be helpful. I strongly suggest that you subscribe to the channel and activate the bell if you have not already done so. This will ensure that you do not miss any videos. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. Now, let's proceed with our plans. Rugs and mats that are worn out are the 9th item. When used for a period of time, rugs and mats have the ability to blend in with their surroundings. We become so accustomed to walking over them that we stop noticing the corners that are frayed, the colors that have faded, or the patches that never seem to be able to be cleaned. However, worn-out floor coverings that are old and worn can do more than simply look worn out. Both the appearance and the energy of a whole area might be subtly diminished by their presence. How a room feels is largely determined by the flooring that is installed. A rug that is bright and clean encourages warmth and comfort, whereas a rug that is damaged or threadbare may make even the most tidy room appear as like it has been neglected. Signs of wear and tear in common goods might, from a psychological standpoint, elicit mild feelings of melancholy, nostalgia, or even defeat. These are feelings that get more intense with the passage of time, particularly if we possess the perception that we are unable to repair them. Consider the case of Eleanor, a 78-year-old woman from Maine who once had a lovely floral rug in her living room for many years. It had been there for decades, and it had been a part of numerous memories, but, as time passed, the colors had darkened, the edges had been curled, and stains had become permanent guests, due to the fact that she was afraid of letting go of an excessive amount of history. She was hesitant to replace it. On the other hand, when she eventually made the decision to purchase a new and uncomplicated rug that reflected the coziness of her house without the weight of the past, the entire room and her mood improved almost instantly. There is no requirement that the cost of replacing an old rug be high. There are instances when a smaller, more straightforward mat with a bright color or easy-to-understand design can do wonders. It is not so much about spending a ton of money as it is about making the conscious decision to honor the life you are living right now, rather than the one you lived 30 years ago. It is possible that refreshing what is underfoot might also assist reduce physical hazards like as tripping. So making your home safer in addition to making it more beautiful. Consider it not as the loss of a portion of your story but rather as the addition of a new, clean page to your story on which you can continue writing. Your house should have the feeling of being alive, of being cared for, and of being prepared to welcome each new moment that you infuse into it. There are instances when beginning from the ground up is the most straightforward method for reviving the places that you have in your everyday existence. A home's furniture conveys a silent narrative, and over time, that narrative may become a little confused. Furniture communicates a tale about a home. Once upon a time, mismatched, worn-out chairs and side tables might have been charming or functional. Nevertheless, when they accumulate, they can give your living areas a sense of randomness and disarray that is difficult to ignore. A room might give the impression that it has lost its core and its feeling of harmony without even having one too many items that are scuffed and unsteady. Whether it's for sentimental or practical reasons, we frequently keep these items in our possession. It's possible that the chair was a gift from a relative, or that the side table was a deal at a yard sale that was too good to pass up. On the other hand, when these pieces do not blend in smoothly with the flow of the room as a whole, they create visual interruptions that make the space feel less settled and less tranquil. It has been discovered by psychologists that surroundings that have an excessive amount of visual inconsistencies, colors, shapes, and styles that are in opposition to one another rather than complementing one another might indirectly contribute to feelings of unease or restlessness. Particularly as we get older, the importance of cultivating places that foster a sense of peace and comfort is growing at an alarming rate. Taking into consideration the situation of Patricia, a 69-year-old woman from Illinois, who became aware that her living room had gradually become occupied by an unusual array of furnishings. For example, she had a scratched coffee table that was nestled uncomfortably into a corner, a flowered recliner that no longer matched anything else, and an end table that was shattered from her time in college. Her home felt larger, lighter, and immeasurably more serene after she finally took the time to pair, retaining just the pieces that genuinely worked together and supported her lifestyle. She did this by keeping only the items that were compatible with each other. This does not imply that everything must be flawlessly coordinated or appear to be taken from a furniture catalog. Having a small amount of personality is excellent, but if you are deliberate about what you keep and what you get rid of, your space will be able to tell a more distinct and tranquil tale, one that accurately portrays who you are at this moment. Your home serves as a safe haven for me. There is no need to strive for perfection when selecting furniture that are designed to complement that sensation. It's about paying respect to the life you're living right now and giving yourself the gift of a place that feels as cozy, welcome, and rooted as you deserve it to be. A11. Closets that are so full that clothing spill out onto chairs, racks, or even bedroom corners can cause the entire house to feel overwhelmed. Closets are designed to be hidden storage spaces, but when they become so full that clothes spill out onto these surfaces, the entire house can begin to feel overwhelmed. Closets that are stuffed to capacity and racks of clothing that are visible are indicators of a certain kind of background chaos, one that stealthily eats away at the tranquility and simplicity that you deserve in your personal space. You might believe that it is nothing more than a few extra jackets or that it is only temporary. But the accumulation of these minor visual diversions creates a subliminal impression of being surrounded by work that has not yet been completed. Individuals who have personal spaces that are cluttered, particularly their bedrooms and closets, have been shown to have higher levels of stress and a lower quality of rest. According to psychological research, despite the fact that you are not consciously thinking about it, it is more difficult to totally rest when your mind is constantly registering stacks and overflow. As an illustration, George, a Wisconsin resident who was 72 years old, had 2 mobile racks of clothes in the spare bedroom that he called his own. The temporary remedy that was initially implemented during the process of cleaning out the closet eventually became a permanent fixture that caused the entire area to feel claustrophobic and uneasy. After he had gone through his closet, donated the items that he was no longer wearing, and arranged the remaining items in a nice manner in his primary closet, he discovered that not only did the space appear to be larger, but he also experienced an increase in his own sensation of lightness and readiness. Instead of clinging on to everything out of habit or guilt, it is more liberating to own fewer things that serve you well. This is because you will have more flexibility. The moment you open a closet and see nothing but the things that you adore and make use of, you experience a sense of order and tranquility that goes well beyond the confines of that particular room. When you let rid of excess, you are not engaging in deprivation. It is about making life easier, more pleasurable, and smoother through the day-to-day living. It is a modest shift that conveys a big message to yourself on a daily basis through the statement, "I have enough. It is sufficient to have me." My home is a reflection of the tranquil and purposeful life that I have chosen to build for myself. The 12th list is collections that do not have display logic. A significant number of us have amassed collections, souvenirs, antique plates, sports memorabilia, sculptures, and travel items over the course of our collective lifetimes. It is common for these products to have a personal significance and to bring joy. On the other hand, if they are dispersed throughout the house without any discernible structure or display rationale, they can rapidly begin to appear as clutter rather than as treasured memories. In situations when everything is displayed at the same time and in no particular sequence, the visual noise can be so overwhelming that it can overpower the very allure that the products are intended to provide. However, rather than reflecting your preferences and experiences, it may give the impression that objects are haphazardly arranged, as if they were simply positioned wherever there was a vacant surface. This kind of clutter is a source of distraction from a psychological standpoint. Patterns and coherence are things that the brain wants. Simply being in the room can be cognitively exhausting, especially when the objects in the room appear to be placed in a random manner or compete for attention. Especially after the age of 60, when the home ought to become more of a sanctuary. Providing your collections with the appropriate space and rhythm may make a world of difference in how they are experienced. For illustration purposes, let's take Joe, a man from Missouri who was 75 years old and had a strong interest in collecting vintage cameras. As time went on, they eventually made their way onto every shelf in his home, including the bookshelves, end tables, and even the windowsill in the kitchen. On a certain day, he made the decision to arrange them in a deliberate manner on a single wall in his study, arranging them in an even manner on shadow box shelves. Instantaneously, the collection went from being a distracting background clutter to a significant and valued focal point assemblage. The remainder of the house. What about it? Never before had it felt so much lighter, more open, and more intimate than it did now. It is not necessary for the process of creating display logic to be difficult. The goods that you display can be rotated throughout the year. You can utilize a single cabinet or display case, or you can combine items that are most similar together. The purpose of this is not to conceal your tale. The key is to exhibit it with care so that you and your visitors can both thoroughly appreciate the beauty that lies behind each individual piece. Not only are you arranging things when you give your collections a place of their own, but you are also organizing things, honoring memories, establishing focus, and constructing a house that feels both lived in and lovingly curated are all things that you are doing. 13th, there are an excessive amount of blankets and throw pillows. The addition of throw cushions and soft blankets may provide a room with a lovely texture and a sense of warmth. On the other hand, when every chair, sofa, and bed is covered in layers of them, the impact changes from being inviting to being overwhelming. Instead of conveying a sense of warmth, an excessive amount of textiles can give the impression that a space is claustrophobic, disorganized, and more difficult to maneuver, both visually and physically. It is not uncommon for what begins as a means of incorporating a touch of elegance and coziness to quickly become a source of clutter without our knowledge. According to the findings of psychologists, an excessive amount of even a positive thing, such as colors, textures, or patterns, can cause the senses to get overloaded, making it more difficult for the mind to feel comfortable in a room where relaxation and ease should be the primary focus. Reducing the layers can bring back that sense of calm more effectively than any fashionable design trick could ever hope to do. Consider the case of Nancy, a Florida resident who was 71 years old and cherished the idea of adorning her living room with throw pillows featuring vivid patterns. Over the course of time, however, she came to the realization that her guests did not have a comfortable spot to sit without first having to move 2 or 3 cushions. When she reduced the number of things in her space to a select few and paired them with colors that complemented each other, her room immediately became more inviting and open. And she felt the same way. Not only is there a significant distinction between snug and crowded, but the beauty of simplifying is that it does not mean removing all of the individuality from the situation. Simply put, it means allowing a few smart accents to shine without competing with other elements for attention. It is possible to make the entire space feel more deliberate, more ventilated, and much simpler to appreciate by selecting 2 or 3 pillows that are in harmony with the atmosphere of the room and arranging blankets neatly into a basket or across a single chair. When you are at this point in your life, your house ought to have the atmosphere of a refuge, rather than a collection of duties that you have to take care of every time you want to sit down and rest. To have less clutter means to have less distractions, which allows one to concentrate more on the things that are genuinely important, such as ease, comfort, and the simple pleasure of being at home. Paper is able to multiply in a stealthy manner while we are not paying attention to it. Examples include invoices, medical documents, invites, insurance updates, and handwritten notes. In a shorter amount of time than we think, they accumulate in nooks and crannies, on countertops, and within drawers. Your life will soon be filled with a persistent low-level hum of unfinished business as a result of these stacks, which will eventually create not only a visible mess but also a constant visual mess. The accumulation of even modest amounts of paperwork has been demonstrated to be a source of stress. Tasks that are visible to the brain, even if they are only inferred, are treated as something that requires attention by the brain. Additionally, when reminders of unfinished activities are dispersed throughout the environment, it becomes more difficult to truly relax and to be present, even while you are in your own house. One of the most liberating gifts you can give yourself is the ability to cope with these mountains of paper, particularly around the age of 60, when mental tranquility becomes more valuable than it has ever been. Consider the case of Henry, a Colorado resident who was 74 years old and had a number of baskets filled with paperwork that were dispersed throughout his home. There was one for the mail, another for the taxes, and yet another for the recipes that he intended to organize at some point in the future. As time went on, even he was unable to recall what was contained within each mound. Not only did he discover that his surfaces were clearer, but he also discovered that his mind was clearer after he finally set out a weekend to sort, shred, file, and destroy materials, in addition to the sensation that the home was lighter and the rooms were larger. He experienced an unexpected burst of tranquility that he had not realized he had been lacking. A tiny file box for active documents, a drawer for sentimental items you wish to save, and a routine once a week to sort anything new are all examples of simple routines that help prevent mounds from taking over again. It's not about finding the best way to organize things. It is about having enough respect for yourself to get rid of the mental and physical clutter that prevents you from moving forward comfortably. Your home will no longer be a constant reminder that you neglected anything every time you go by a table or chair once the paperwork has been organized and reduced to a minimum. Instead, it transforms into a spot where you can actually breathe, concentrate, and take pleasure in the times that are most significant to you. This brings us to number 15. Misplaced hobby supplies. Hobbies are a wonderful way to spend time after the age of 60. Creativity, engagement, and a connection to our passions are all maintained by them. On the other hand, when the equipment and supplies required for such hobbies begin to disperse themselves into every nook and cranny of the house, they have the potential to unintentionally generate visual disarray and make the rooms in which people live feel unorganized. In the dining room, there are materials for sewing. On the kitchen counter, there are painting supplies, and in the garden, there are also gardening gloves, as a result of being thrown upon the bench in the doorway. The end result is the same: a home that appears to be more disorganized than settled. Joy is connected to this kind of mess, which is what makes it difficult to deal with. We reassure ourselves that it is acceptable since it is for a purpose that is significant. However, even junk that brings delight takes up space. It is also more difficult to relax, concentrate, and experience a sense of being truly at home when the boundaries between living rooms and sections designated for hobbies grow blurry. There is also the mental burden that comes with the fact that these things are not in their proper location. It is possible that they will say to you that you have not completed anything, or even worse, that you ought to be doing more. Each time you pass them, there is a gradual accumulation of that quiet guilt over time. which transforms your passions into pressure points rather than areas of pleasure. Take, for example, Darlene, a 68-year-old woman from Washington who cherished the opportunity to create holiday decorations for her grandchildren. Her living room, on the other hand, was gradually being taken over by a collection of glitter boxes, glue guns, ribbon, and felt bags, when she finally had the opportunity to build a tiny craft nook in her guest room. Complete with storage shelves and a folding table, she noticed that the atmosphere in her entire home became more tranquil. Her time spent crafts became more concentrated and joyful, and the primary living spaces in her home reverted to their previous state of calm and cleanliness. It is not about giving up something that you enjoy doing, in order for such hobbies to develop without taking over the rest of your life. It is important to appreciate them to the extent that you give them their own place. There is no requirement for a home to be extravagant in order to respect both creativity and serenity. To put it simply, it must be done on purpose. 16. Huge decorative things that have not been used. The use of large, statement-making decorations, such as ornate vases, gigantic artificial plants, and massive centerpieces, has proven to be quite appealing. When they were first introduced into your home, they may have imparted a feeling of opulence or personality. These huge artifacts, however, frequently become exactly that when they outlive their usefulness or when they no longer fit the spirit of the place in which they are located. The presence of large objects that occupy an excessive amount of space and subtly drag down everything else. As a result of the fact that we have kept these pieces for such a long time, they tend to be left behind because they fit in with the background. However, much like with outdated furniture or surfaces that are cluttered, large ornamental things that no longer serve a purpose or bring delight can rob a space of its openness, making even enormous places feel claustrophobic, overstuffed, and out of date. Items that are no longer able to fit properly and are big can have a psychological impact on how you see your surroundings. It is a symptom of imbalance, a kind of unresolved conflict between what did not exist in the past and what does exist in the present. When something dominates a space without contributing value to it, and after the age of 60, when simplicity and breathing room become more vital than they have ever been, the decision to let go of these underused accents can provide a sense of lightness that goes far beyond the physical. Consider the case of Larry, a man from Nevada who was 70 years old and had a tall artificial plant in his hallway that had been there since the 1990s without being removed. This was not in keeping with his present style. Natural light was obstructed by it. Moreover, he experienced a tinge of annoyance each time he went by it. But he was unable to explain why. After he had finally removed it, he was taken aback by the sudden sense of openness and tranquility that he experienced in that hallway. The process of letting go of huge decorative pieces does not mean that you are removing the personality from your home. It's about making room for better flow, more movement, and a space that reflects your life right now, not the fashions or preferences of decades gone by. To achieve a sense of fullness in your home, it is not necessary to fill it to the brim. There are times when the most invigorating shift is the result of clearing space and granting oneself freedom to let go of things that are no longer appropriate. Lastly, some thoughts. It is Summerseed01. As the video for today comes to a close, I would like you to take a minute to think about the 16 common clutter traps that we have discussed. How many of these did you recognize in your own domestic space? As far as you are concerned, which one is the most pressing or exciting for you to address first? It would be wonderful if you could get in touch with us. I would appreciate it if you could leave a comment below regarding one item that you have learned today and how you intend to put it to use in order to make your living area more beautiful, calmer, and lighter. It is important to keep in mind that removing clutter does not mean to erase your history. Respecting the life that you are now living is the focus here. Making a decision to live in peace, making a decision to simplify, and making a house that makes you feel better every time you step through the door are all important. An act of care, a promise to the vivid and blooming life that lies ahead of you. and a gift to yourself are all things that you can do with each and every small change that you make. We appreciate you being here with us today. It would be wonderful if you could get in touch with us. Please leave a comment below and tell us about one item you discovered today and how you intend to put it to use in your life right now. We place a high value on your opinions, so please do not be reluctant to share them with us. Our inspiration and encouragement are greatly increased as a result of reading your remarks. I would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it to be informative and enjoyable. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. We appreciate you taking the time to watch, and we hope to see you in the future video.